You're listening to Unfiltered Brew, hosted by Master Cicerone Joe Vogelbacher and brewery founder Eric Flanigan, out of the Sugar Creek Brewing Company in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Just because this guy's wearing a tractor hat doesn't mean he knows jack shit about beer. Pouring on an angle means that the carbonation releases gradually and the last sip as sparkling as the first. Nice try, Goober.
You know what's crazy is you got to I forget sometimes people are in a different place when they're watching those YouTube videos, with the technology. That guy, that's why sometimes you get the guy that call, he could be sitting in London calling you a wanker. You know what I mean? It's just, you never know where these people are when they're writing these comments. It's crazy.
The world's a big place, and when you put yourself out there, of course you're going to get trolled to death. So I don't know if you had a chance to. So I mean, we're relatively new on this station there that we're making, and trying to give people insight into what it's like inside the brewery and
literally inside on this episode.
Yeah, so today we're reaching out to you all right from the heart of the brewery here. Behind Eric, you'll see the packaging line, and then some of our they call that the cellar back there, where you age beer and ferment the beer. And you can see we have our 90 barrel and 60 barrel tanks. We got one more on the way coming soon. And
we're looking at a beautiful wall of barrel aged beer. I mean, some of these beers,
yeah, maybe we can get a shot.
12 months in here, some of these Flanders Reds, beers that people don't really care about anymore,
Yeah, I think you were going to ask me about the spider webs, right?
Oh, yeah. I was going to say the trip you went on was amazing to hear when you came back. This was one of the few that I didn't go on with you, but you had a great time. You used a lot of lambic baskets, but one of the stories you were telling me was, how old was the brewery that you went to?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say I don't know exactly how old, but Cantillon, that's the classic, famous beer nerd brewery in Brussels. And they've been making the beer the same way for hundreds of years. And they do a classic style of brewing called turbid mashing. All their equipment's super old. They don't add any yeast to the beer. So they've been brewing it that traditional way before Louis Pasteur discovered that yeast was the impetus for fermentation. So they just know that if they open the windows up at night and let the air blow across the wort, that magically it ferments and they get the alcoholic fizzy beverage that they love so much. So they take that beer that's been fermenting in the cool ship, or inoculated technically in the cool ship, and then pump it into these really old barrels. And inside the barrels, they sit and age from anywhere between 1 and 3 years.
Can you tell people what a cool ship is that don't know what that is?
Sure.
I think that's important.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So when you make beer and you create the wort, okay, the wort is like the tea of beer. It's loaded with all different types of sugars, some dextrins and long chain carbohydrates, short chain carbohydrates. These become the food for fermentation, the food for yeast, right? So the brewer can adjust the creation of the wort to develop a wort that is suitable for certain styles of beer. Anyway, I digress, I should say. But this wort gets pumped up into a big shallow container, and this shallow container is called a cool ship. And the reason being is that you don't want the wort to cool down super slowly. You want to try to cool it as fast as you can. That makes the best quality beer. So they have a big shallow container, and they open the windows up to let the cool breeze come in, and that cool breeze flows over the wort, and then overnight it'll cool down. And at the same time, the traditional way, it gets inoculated with the Brussels night air. So it's a big open container. It's up in the attic of Cantillon, and
what lives in the attic?
Well, it's actually, I think it's copper, the copper vessel they have up there. And I have some pictures, so maybe I can feed those into the, right, yeah. I think that one's copper, but I'm not sure. Most of the time it's stainless steel, and it's pretty clean. They do a good job cleaning it. Also, the hops are aged up there, which is really weird for a lambic. to make that style, they age the hops, which debitters the hops. So all the alpha acids go away, but it also gives them like a cheesy aroma. That's isovaleric acid is what it's called. And these old hops get added to the beer, and that's just part of the classic style. So it gets cooled down there, pumped into the barrels, and then inside the barrels is where the magic happens. That's where you get this whole plethora of microorganisms living in the barrel that give it a really bracingly tart and sour taste. So historically, all beer would have been sour. Anyway, through science, they've studied the barrels now, and they know that it's really not the coolship that gives the beer the fermentation. It's the organisms that have embedded themselves inside the cellulose of the wood, and it's those organisms that ferment the beer and give it this sour taste. So you can't, if you try lambic on its own out of the barrel, it's so tart that it feels like it's going to take the enamel off your teeth. It's not.
We've had that here.
Yeah, it's not super pleasant.
Yep.
So what they do to make it pleasant is they blend it with a younger one. So the older it gets, the more sour it gets. They blend it with the younger one. So you have between 1 year and 3 year aged lambics blended together, bottled in the champagne method, carbonated inside the bottle, blended with fruit, and then you get this really unique, crazy beer they call Goose in Belgium, and that's the national drink there. So if you ever get a chance to travel, try it out. It's kind of a neat thing. But hey, we didn't come on here to talk about Goose today. But
Wait. Tell them about my favorite part, the spiders.
So I learned that when I went over there too. Apparently they don't clean off the top of the barrels, and they feel that the spiders are kind of like the patron saint of the brewery, because this, as things ferment and the gases come out of the barrel, it might spill a little bit of beer, and that attracts fruit flies. Well, fruit flies are a spoiler for the beer, so they like the spider webs because they trap the fruit flies, and it becomes like a natural
Defense.
Exactly, natural defense mechanism for the beer. So they say never get rid of the spiders because they won't go in the beer. They just eat the flies.
So my funny story off of that is, you bring home Cantillon for me. I finally get the chance. My kids go to bed. My wife and we're cooking. We're finishing up our dinner, and I try to pull the cork on this bottle, trying to explain to my wife, there's only so many of these bottles, and we're staring at the labels, and and I try to get the cork out of this thing, and I'm pulling so hard, it finally comes out, and the bottle goes crashing into my brand new farmhouse sink that I just got, and it hairline fractures the sink all the way down to the drain.
Those bottles are thick because it's meant to bring up a lot of carbonation, so they have to be thick.
It cracked my entire sink. That sink was probably a month old. And I patched it, repaired it, because I just felt so bad. But the beer was good.
But they're loaded with probiotics and prebiotics. So you have to be careful when you drink those sour beers, because too many of them will, it'll mess your gut up. So it's kind of like having a mega dose of yogurt or kombucha or something like that. And, all those different bacteria which are good for gut health are in there, but a little bit too much can be bad. Now, one thing that people don't know oftentimes about sour beer is that when you ferment it wild like that, and you open the door to the whole world of natural bacteria, some in there some that end up fermenting the beer can cause an allergic reaction in some people. So they're called biogenic amines. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but certain strains of these bacterias will cause a histamine reaction in people. So what that means is that I guess what I'm getting at is that when you ferment with bacteria you get from a lab, they can do PCR analysis on it and determine if it's this type or not. When you open the door and just let wild yeast ferment, there's a risk that you could actually be causing GI irritation or a histamine allergic reaction to your customer. So it's something that you have to be careful of, and it kind of makes me not so eager to do that open style of fermentation. I'd rather know exactly what I'm putting in the beer and know that for fact that the customer is getting, hey, a good quality yeast in there.
All right, so I'll go out on a limb here.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll tell me I'm wrong in the comments. And I'm not saying I'm right. If that almost sounds like honey, right? Your bees go out and pollinate in your area.
Yeah.
So if we were to ferment like that, okay, would our beer help people with the local allergies around here a little bit better?
That's really interesting. I never thought of it that way, but I mean,
don't they say try to eat your local honey?
Yeah, I mean, when you probably know this, but I wasn't staying out in the field in Afghanistan when I went. I was in the city, and of course you have a lot of allergies from the terrible air quality there, and then different microflora and all that stuff. And the local honey, they always said, hey, because the Afghanis actually harvest a lot of local honey from the caves up there in the mountains. They said, get some of that and it'll make your allergies go away, and it worked like a charm. So yeah, no, that's pretty cool. But
so maybe we could cool ship something and see if it helps with allergies.
It might. Yeah, maybe
that would help around here.
Maybe that's a cut. But hey, yeah. So back to the YouTube video, right? So we put out these couple shorts talking about how to pour beer and things, and I was excited to see that we got more than 20,000 views. And
technology is incredible.
Some of the stuff that people say, it's just you have to have thick skin, of course, because you get trolled to death. But, in my last video, I talked about how to do the stacked pour. And when you try to educate yourself, you don't, I don't just make this stuff up. You get it from other industry experts and people that kind of paved the way. So for anybody that wants to know, the idea of the stacked pour was really brought by Randy Mosher in his tasting beer book.
Randy's the man. We got to get him.
And I'd love to have him on board and talk about this. But Randy says, always on here, pour boldly down the center of an absolutely clean glass. It foams up, but this is good. So he talks about doing it in 3 pours here, and this is where I get it. And hey, this doesn't necessarily work for everything. If you're in fast service, you come into Sugar Creek and we have a big line of people, we're going to tilt it on an angle, that kind of stuff, and still get a nice foam collar. But maybe something we talk about in the future will be how they do it in the Czech Republic. They have 3 types of pours there. They have a pour that's all foam. In the Czech Republic, this is for the end of the night. It has a sweet, foamy beer. They have one that has a 2-finger head on there, and then they have one where they pour a little head and insert the faucet underneath of it so that foam layer kind of prevents oxidation of the beer. So Czech Republic, people over there, the per capita, they drink more beer than anybody in the world, right? And that's where the Pilsner was invented.
Oh, yeah.
So you think, I'm just not just making this stuff up. Other cultures have a better understanding, but
well, what else too? I'll say this: I love a good aggressive pour. Well, you also have to realize what beer is in your hand, because some people may come in under carbonation, and I don't want to pour all the life out of that beer, But I will say this: the more carbonation you pour in, the less goes in your gut,
Yeah, that brings me to the other point, right? Frozen glasses.
Oh, man.
Right? So why, my dad especially, he loved frozen glasses.
I grew up with frozen, my dad too,
Yeah, so that's kind of like your grandpa's beer, your dad's beer. You have to have that frozen mug, get your Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors Light, you're getting your macro lager poured into that frozen glass. So why shouldn't you do it? And here's why. Well, number one, it keeps the beer even colder. So like I said in my previous talk, the colder your beer, the more carbonation stays in that, right? So now you're going to keep the carbonation in. You're not releasing any carbonation, which suppresses the aroma of the beer. So you don't want that. That's one of the reasons. Another reason not to use a frozen glass, because you don't know what's in your freezer, right? And that air circulates around in there. You have old fish. Who knows what people put in there? We actually put in our freezer like a knee brace. An old knee brace where you're trying to ice your knee down, an ice patch. It could be anything in there. So all of those aromas from the freezer that are circulating in there stick to the glass, okay, and stick to the water vapor in there. And when you melt that, it goes into the beer. That's another reason why you don't want it, which is super gross.
It's funny your perspective is like that. I think that's why you and I are good partners, because my head immediately went to your favorite local pub, or you go out to eat, and a lot of these restaurants will keep their glassware cold. And a lot of times bartenders are also storing lemons, limes, which isn't that bad, but then you've got blue cheese, olives, you've got herbs for certain products, mojitos. And then the worst thing that I didn't hear you say yet, a lot of these refrigeration or freezers don't get serviced regularly. So there's definitely mold in them, particularly in your Patron cork bottles and things like that. The mold loves to stick to those. Once you taste mold in beer, you'll always know what it tastes like.
It's really powerful. It's a big molecule, trichloroanisole. That's the chemical. So yeah, mold getting stuck to the glass, dirt getting stuck to the glass, and then thawed out into your beer, right?
But on the other side, you don't want a hot glass either. I've had people take it right out of the dishwasher, pour my beer in it, and my beer's immediately dead.
Yeah, so you want the room temperature glass. Yep. That's the idea, clean room temperature glass. So back to it, right? So the main reason is all the dirt and particles and grime that gets stuck to the glass, thawing out, getting in there, right? You would never freeze your glass and then pour water and drink it, right?
Well, that's how you sold me on it.
Yeah, you tested it out.
I did that, and it did not taste like normal water,
It's super gross, right? Another thing is it gets the beer too cold. Now, besides keeping the CO2 entrained in the beer and not releasing the aromas, a too cold beer will numb your whole mouth. It numbs your taste bud. It reduces the flavor from the malt, and it reduces the enjoyment of the beer in general. So you want the beer to be not too cold. Not 28 degrees to 32 below freezing, so you freeze your whole taste bud and mouth.
That's why you see a lot of your really good beer tasters, they'll usually have their beer embedded in the palm of their hand, trying to warm it up.
Yeah, just like anything, there's exceptions.
Yep.
There's always exceptions, and this isn't a one-size-fits-all sort of thing.
So that's a good point. Now, let me ask you this. If you do a stack pour straight down the middle, which a lot of people were clearly upset about, YouTube, thank you, which I found very amusing. If you were to pour a very, very cold beer straight down the middle, and in a very, very warm beer or lukewarm beer straight down the middle, two totally different experiences, right?
Yeah, no doubt. So the solubility of CO2 is in part determined by the temperature. That's called Henry's Law. And the colder the beer is, the more CO2 goes in the beer. Simple as that. The warmer, the more comes out, right? So as you heat the beer up, the CO2 wants to come out of solution, and you could break the glass. So for instance, right behind us, you'll see, I don't know if it's in the shot or not, but our pasteurizer's behind us. So we do some brewing where we will add flavor at the end of the packaging process, and we need to make sure it's pasteurized. So when we do that, we have to fill the can up a little bit less, because when it goes through the pasteurizer and gets heated, it'll expand and you could potentially blow those up. It sounds like a grenade in the pasteurizer, not a good time.
And we never pasteurize, just getting ahead of the comments, anything hoppy or anything, or maybe we should have let people ask that one.
Yeah, no, craft beer, one of the things that's special about craft beer is that it's predominantly unpasteurized and fresh, right? So you kill some of the flavor when you heat it up and pasteurize it, right? So our goal is to get the freshest possible beer to our customer so they can drink it fresh, unpasteurized, and enjoy it as much as possible. If you're expanding your brewery and you're going across the country and going into multiple states, it's more important to keep a stable product on there. So you stabilize the product at the brewery, and you know that when people get it across state lines, it's going to be more consistent as you expand. So depending on what style, like you never pasteurize a hazy beer because that'll just kill all the hop aroma. It kills it. Or IPAs that are ultra pasteurized, no bueno. But Pilsners, lagers, things where it's not about the hops, it's more about the malt, you can pasteurize and it'll kind of lock in the flavor. But we don't do that with anything right yet of any of our beers.
It's a tough decision to make.
It is, yeah. So you have to really understand what the flavor is like before and after, know where your beer is going. It's really an art, like many things in brewing, art and science, right? So,
but I mean, trying to keep that beer exactly the way it is, fresh, and getting it to the consumer, or realizing we need to pasteurize this so that if I taste this 6 months from now in a particular grocery store in the Appalachian Mountains, it tastes better then. That's a huge decision.
Yeah. I mean, It's an important one. And as the brewery grows, I think Ken Grossman said it the best. If you read in the quality of beer handbook that he published with the Brewers Association, he did the foreword. And in the foreword, Ken said something along the lines of, hey, I've been doing this 30 years and we still make mistakes because packaging beer is hard and getting great beer out there, across the country is really hard, right? So here you have one of the best in the business, a father of craft beer, saying, hey, I still have a hard time doing it and I have every resource there is. So all you small guys out there, good luck, and you better have your foot on the quality and your thumb on the pulse at every possible instant.
It's not competition to us. We know that, but I mean, there's so many good beers out there, and everybody wants growth, and it's not for monetary reasons because no one's getting rich in this business. We joked around that before, but just seeing somebody with your beer, when somebody sends you a picture of, people have sent us pictures from all over the world because we did export for a little while, but that's the best part of this particular business for me is that joy you can spread,
Well, hey, I remember a nod to old Tim Lenahan, who was our original mentor from the Siebel Institute. He kind of came in, helped us get set up and mentored us and taught us. And he said, I remember telling him, hey, I really want to learn how to taste beer because how can you make great beer if you don't taste great beer? And Tim said, hey, it's important for you as brewmaster to learn how to taste good beer, but it's the most important for your sales team to know because they're out there in the market with the customer trying your beer and it's been beat up by the time it gets out there, right? So what do you think about that?
I remembered, it put a lot of pressure on me because I was so focused on sales and marketing, and we were designing labels at the time, and we were realizing we needed to get on a grocery store shelf. And then Tim hit us with that, and I'm going, oh man, I've got to become an expert on tasting too. And it's true,
But now you are. Think about it.
The repetition is there now.
Think of how much you know now.
Absolutely, and there's still so much I don't know. But yeah, to your point. We've had a few sales guys here and there, and thankfully we don't have a lot of turnover here, but we've had guys that knew exactly how to taste beer, and we've had guys that didn't, even brewers. I won't say his name, but I'll never forget when you came back from Afghanistan, we were doing our normal sit down, and I know I'm going off topic, but this one's good. We kind of used to pull a page out of the Dogfish book, and we do Beer 30 on Fridays. Now it's very busy around here, and sometimes it's hard to do, but
people get tired at the end of the day.
One of our brewers at the time, Joe, had just gotten back from Afghanistan, and literally we all sit down to start tasting beer. We all get our judging sheets out and our tasting notes sheets out, and we start tasting beers blindly. And it wasn't to beat up the beer, it was to talk about the beer. And he threw a dip in.
I know.
You remember that?
Yeah, like how are you going to taste beer with that in your mouth?
Oh, no. Come on. And he's like, I've been drinking beer my entire life with dip in my mouth, so this is how I'll drink it. I'm going, all right, sure. But,
Well, he didn't last too long after that.
So, yes, tasting beer is very important for the sales force. Push it. That was half the reason why Cicerone was a good decision for us, not to be a commercial for them, but it's a trusted training tool that you can put people on. And in my opinion, if you don't have sales guys, your tap room should be on it too. And I know we've mentioned that before, but an actual employee bartending for you and you coming in and trying to experience this the right way, the right information being delivered to you makes the experience a million times better.
Look, credentialing organizations exist for a reason. Simple as that, right? Like if you hire an attorney, you want to know that they passed the bar exam and they know the stuff that they're doing, right? That's why we have that, or a CPA, or any kind of professional, or even a welder, that they have their certifications to do work on, say, stainless steel pipes, or you pick it, you certified plumber, pick whatever it is. They have credentialing organizations for that, and the Cicerone program is a great one because they filled this void by providing a level playing ground for people that think they know stuff to come in, test their knowledge, and be certified to have a certain level of knowledge, right? So, it's your point about the brewer that put the dip in and said, I've been doing this 20 years, I know. It's just like somebody that goes out golfing, right? You have somebody out golfing their whole career, work career, and they golf with people and they never get better because they never focus on actually trying to get better. They just say, I've been doing it for 20 years, or like, hey, I've been drinking beer for 20 years. That makes me an expert. No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all.
You're absolutely right. And neither one of us know how to golf. So, but I have been playing golf on and off for a long time, and I still stink at it. And I like the camaraderie out of it. But you're right. I've never gone to the range or seen a coach to try and get better. So that's a good analogy. I like.
Yeah, I mean, you need to have a good mentor. You got to study it, do what's called deliberate practice. So you apply the same ideas of deliberate practice to beer, and you can start learning the ins and outs of the industry. And as you know, from 10 years in it now, the more you learn, you realize, man, I haven't even scratched the surface on this. So I always find it funny. You have the comments on there. They're like, man, this guy doesn't know anything about pouring a beer or anything about beer. And, you don't let your feelings get hurt because after, I think, 10 million cans of beer that we sold, going through the Cicerone program all the way up to Master Cicerone, selling beer, working with distributors, talking to customers, and living it every day, day in and day out for 10,000 hours, an internet keyboard warrior can't dissuade you.
Well, the thing is, like I was saying, every culture is different and everybody's in a different place at that point in time, especially in their life. So, you can't sweat the cold stuff. I got an old elementary teacher that used to tell me that, don't sweat the cold stuff, so. But hey, I got a question for you. We don't have a whole lot of time in this brewery these days, and we keep getting busier, which is great. But if you could brew a style from anywhere in the world, what style would you want to do? If you had all the time in the world, when you were just talking about those cool ships and things, I remembered in the beginning years, you and I were trying all kinds of, remember the green bottle Saisons from Belgium? Those were so good. And I wanted to do those so bad. Like, think along those lines,
So, I mean, that's a really deep question because
I knew it was going to be hard for you.
Yeah. The thing that you learn doing this for a while now is that it's not about what I want. Right? And it's not about what you want.
Yeah, you're right.
It's about what our guests want.
Yep.
And if we focus on that, then I think that's really the heart of making great beer. It's what the guest wants, right? So what I think is interesting and unique is different than what the majority of our guests think, right? That's why we have our best sellers now. A lot of them are fruited beers. So, I mean, I did say that I wanted to do fruited beers from the beginning because I think that's really fun thing to do, and there was kind of a void in that.
Well, the sours have been amazing for us too. The fruited sours have been amazing. How about the Icelandic beer you were talking about brewing for a while?
Oh, I'll probably mess the pronunciation up of this. Is Kvike.
Kvike, there you go.
Yeah.
We have not attempted that yet. Maybe we should.
Well, yeah. So that style is I believe, Finnish style, and it's a farmhouse style where people had kind of dried yeast and passed it on from generation to generation, and it has found this resurgence because once they studied this yeast, they found out that it doesn't produce a lot of off flavors when you ferment it really warm, which usually the faster, when you speed fermentation up and provide more heat behind it, then you release all kinds of different flavors and aromas from the yeast that might not necessarily be desirable.
But sometimes they taste good.
Yeah, so this Kvike strains of yeast, they don't do that. So you can ferment a pleasantly fruity beer in like 3 days at like over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is totally the opposite from good standard brewing practice. So I never made one of those, but I've studied them, and I'm a little rusty on my beer style, so forgive me, guys.
Well, look, in the comments, instead of giving us a hard time, some of you maybe, if you know anything about Kvikes, talk to us in the comments. Let's get something like that going. That'd be a lot of fun. That'd be a good. So what time of the year would we serve that in the tap room?
So I think traditionally it's a farmhouse style, right? Okay. So you can make them low or high ABV, and they ferment really good. They attenuate really well. And I've tried some IPAs made with these yeast strains, and they're really kind of pleasant. Oh, I'll tell you one that I'm really kind of interested in doing recently. I mean, I always feel fortunate when I get a chance to go judge in, say, if I'm judging in Brazil or judging in Mexico, because you get to see what they're doing and what the creative ideas were. And One of the ones that won this year, which was really cool, was an Italian grape ale. So
That sounds good.
it's really cool. It's a ale, and they blend in the must from wine into this during fermentation.
Huh.
And you get a combination of kind of like a wine and beer, and then they age them in a wine barrel. So it's a beer and wine, and it's really, really delicious. Really
Sounds
cool.
good. So what's the ABV on that?
They could be a variety of ranges, but I believe the one that we did was in the 7% range. So that'd be really cool to make one of those. And then another one, which I found, two beers which I found really, really delicious was, I'll tell you about one. One was a coffee IPA. So that's a IPA where they had taken the beer and recirculated it through coffee beans. Now, what they're doing in Brazil, because they have amazing coffee down there, which is really, really cool now, is they're taking green coffee beans before they roast them, putting them into barrels that have had beer in them. Now the green beans expand and upwards of like 30% by volume and soak all that beer up. Then they'll roast them, and you get a barrel-aged, beer-aged, coffee beer. It's really cool. So I'd love to try more of that and do something with that. That's really delicious. And then the other one that I've seen people brew with now that I think makes one of the most mind-blowing beers I had in Brazil this past year judging was a IPA made with terpenes. So terpenes it's an extract taken from the hop that are very aromatic. So rather than boiling it, they add these terpenes to the end after fermentation, and it makes it really, really a bright bouquet. And this one had chocolate added. So it was a light beer with hoppy terpenes and chocolate, and it was blended together in such a way that it was very subtle. And that's what made it spectacular. So I think the art of brewing beer, okay, let me say this, it comes down to adding the ingredient in a way where it's subtle and not where it's gonna stomp on the person's palate. You want them to say, ooh, what is that? What is that flavor? And this beer nailed that. So I'd love to do a coffee beer, I'd love to do a chocolate beer. Those are kind of cool things that you can do, and they would never be allowed in Germany, right?
Yeah, you're right.
But you can do anything you want here in America. I think that's the reason why we're leading the craft beer renaissance around the world, and we regularly beat the Germans and the Europeans at their own game.
Here we go.
It's true.
Yeah, you're right. I mean,
and even the Japanese, they're known for their craftsmanship. They're getting into the craft beer game. And if you go to the Japanese beer awards, you'll find that almost half of those people that are winning awards have American brewers over there helping them make great craft beer.
I've noticed in the World Cups and the bigger competitions these days, you're seeing a lot more of that, even in the distilling side, you're seeing a lot of that, But pumpkin beer, you want to talk about it?
Oh man, summertime is here. We're in August. Today's like August 5th or 6th, I think.
It's hot.
And we have shipped out a load of pumpkin beer, right?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So when you think about fall spices, cinnamon and allspice and nutmeg and those kind of things, you really think about 100-degree heat.
I fought this for so long. I know we work well with our wholesalers, and our wholesalers have been telling us for years, and we finally do it. And now it completely engulfs our entire summer. And it's very interesting to make a beer like that while it's 100 degrees outside.
Yeah. I mean, we started fermenting them because it's like a 20-day ferment in July. So once we get things packaged, just to show you how the chain works, right? You start basically fermenting in July and package, filtered, package everything by middle of or early first week of August. And then it takes a week to get to the distributor and get through their system. And then it pumps out, and you're looking at showing up on the shelves in the grocery store at the end of August, with the goal that the customer is really scooping these things up end of August, beginning of September, which in the Carolinas is still blazing hot.
And we're not even close to the first guy on the shelf. There's, your big guys have already made it there. They've already parked the bus. They've already put the blocking and tackling out. Now we're out there trying to get the spots that we can. So it's interesting, but it's exciting at the same time too.
So Eric, we're talking about pumpkin beer, right? So Why don't you tell us?
Well, we have to talk about pumpkin beer. We don't want to talk about.
Well, I
pumpkin
just
beer.
happen to have a 4-pack right here.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit about this label. This thing is crazy, man. And I'm going to tell you, I didn't want to release this beer with this
Hated
label. But here, yeah, tell us about this label.
So, we wanted to have some unique art on this one. And, much like our balloon fish, we're trying not to be a commercial on this podcast, but much like our balloon fish, it makes you ask a lot of questions when you look at it. So the idea of this thing, there's a million pumpkin beers out there, guys. You know that, and gals. And you've got a certain amount of time. That's the bad part about selling pumpkin beer, right? And Joe and I will not repeat what we've heard people say they do with their pumpkin beer after October, will we? But, you got a limited time to sell this beer. And in some states, I don't know where you guys are at, they'll hand it back to you. Or in our state, you can. I don't think you can. But, so the following year's sales are based on how good your product moves. So we decided we wanted to go loud and crazy. We had a lot of fun with it. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You got to help me out here a little bit. The original recipe for this was supposed to be a German Marzen, right?
Right. Well, the base.
Full base, yeah.
The base for
grains,
it, yeah.
So a lot of times, you live life in a vacuum, but very much so when you're trying to launch a beer, because a lot of times you don't taste the beer, or you don't know what the beer is going to be like as you're making the art. So, it's like jumping out of an airplane and, putting whatever you want to call it, your parachute together or your plane together as you hit the ground. So, based off the fact that we knew we were going to use a German Marzen and combine a pumpkin, because it's kind of funny. It's pumpkin beer and Oktoberfest usually hit about the same time, right? So we wanted to hit two birds with one stone. So we started getting crazy with it. And I don't know how much detail you want me to go into it, but
what's up with what does she hold in her hand?
So that's the idea. The original idea when communicating with the artist was, hey, we're going to combine a German Marzen and we're going to combine a traditional pumpkin beer. And that's what I want the label to look like. So I originally hand drew him a traditional style German label, and then a pumpkin that was kind of torn down the middle. And then the label looked like two halves. And then his mindset was, hey, we're trying to blend these two. So what we've got is a German female holding a hot dog and a huge German beer. But then to make it fun, we added her. And when I saw her, it was love at first sight. I mean, the eyelashes, the mouth. I remember telling myself, oh, when this woman looks at you on the shelf, you've got to figure out what's going on with her. So in the end, I just wanted to be loud and boisterous. The name Pumpkin Blaster, much like a lot of breweries, our names are usually kind of tossed around for a while until one sticks. And originally the backup plan was going to be her as a pirate on a pirate ship blasting pumpkin cannons out at you.
Yeah.
But this is the one that stuck. So,
well, I think that if I remember correctly, when we were talking about the name, we were talking about that old competition where they put pumpkins in these big cannons and shoot them out on the fields and stuff.
Yep.
So that we thought that was kind of cool, and maybe that was going to be part of it.
Chunkin'.
Yeah, pumpkin chunkin'. That's anyway. Let's try it. You got some glasses?
Oh yeah, I've got some. I just so happen to have some glasses right here.
Perfect.
All right, I am afraid to pour this.
Oh yeah,
No,
after the 25,000.
Come on, baby, crash it in there. Watch the comments come crashing in too.
So when we brew this, we actually add like 700 pounds of pumpkin meat and into the mash. So, and we add some vanilla is added, and some cinnamon and some other spices. And that kind of gives you the flavors of fall with the pumpkin backbone. So it's kind of like a pumpkin pie in the glass. The malt's really critical for this. You have biscuit malt and some caramel malts. These things kind of give you the fresh baked bread and a little bit of that sweetness to go with it, with everything. But, the combination of the ingredients sometimes can be a foam killer. So this one in particular,
Cheers. Smells good.
So, yeah.
Smells good to this year's pumpkin beer.
Thankfully, it's less than 100 in here today, but let's try it.
I got to tell you something. I think every brewery owner in the world thinks that their beer is amazing, but this one's really good.
Yeah.
I think what really helps us with this is we keep it drinkable. It's very drinkable.
Yeah, even she weighs in at 7%. So
I get it, but the body, the sweetness, everything it's and we sound like assholes talking about how good our own beer is on camera, but I would say it's easy to drink. The body is perfect.
Give it a try. You can buy it online if you'd like. Go to our store and we'll ship you a 4-pack and you can try it at home. But yeah, the idea I think was kind of, we're not making an Oktoberfest. We have our next door neighbor is a famous German brewery here in Charlotte, Old Mecklenburg. So we're really friendly with them and we try not to step on their toes too much. So we knew they weren't making a pumpkin beer. They do make a really good German inspired Oktoberfest. Yep. And so we kind of combined our love for the Oktoberfest with a pumpkin beer, and then you have that, Marzen base with the pumpkin backbone.
It's good. Yeah, it's very good. Now that last year's is gone, I think I like this year better.
Yeah, I
like the way it smells.
Let's get it out there and see what the customers think, right?
Well, it's out there. That's the big thing. I think that's a huge strain that a lot of people don't talk about either is, usually you trickle beer out a little at a time. You've got your par levels out there, what people are drinking, what to expect. With pumpkin beer, every year, you're guesstimating, you're hitting a timeline. Everybody wants their beer at once. I mean, typically when we roll out a brand, correct me if I'm wrong, you'll get some of the wholesalers their beer this week, maybe some of the wholesalers their beer next week. And with this, it's everybody's, hey, we need our beer by this date.
It's good because a lot of people think that August is the busy month because it's hot and it's summer, but it's actually the opposite in craft beer. August typically is the slowest around here for us. And, when the weather starts cooling off, it becomes more beer drinking season. So at the first hint that winter is over and we head into the spring, that's really good for beer sales. And then at the end of the heat, when things start cooling down, that's really good for beer sales too. So we're happy to have the pumpkin get out even in the middle of the summertime, but yeah. So, definitely one of our new, unique specialty beers. So you asked me what I wanted to make as far as beer goes. You've tried a lot of different beers and gone all around trying different things. What would you want to make if you could just make anything that you could and didn't have to worry about?
So I've had two ideas and you hated both of them.
Oh, no.
But I understand why, and it's fine. So when we were doing the AI stuff, I joked around on TV that I wanted to make a beer out of broccoli so that you could get the benefits of broccoli through it, right? And I know it's difficult, but with artificial intelligence, I think we could get there. The other beer I wanted to make was it was more along the lines to test the AI, right? Because with AI, you feel like you can get anywhere.
Yeah.
So you should be able to tell the AI, use broccoli, get me to this point in taste, and this is what I want. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So that was what that idea was. But the other one was, we're in North Carolina. We sell beer in North and South Carolina. I do a lot of traveling. I just got back from Greenville, had a great meeting with our wholesaler out there. And there's kudzu vines everywhere. And kudzu vines are destroying our forests.
Yeah.
So I had this idea a while back to figure out a way to start a program where we could get the community or the city or anybody to work with us, cut down the kudzu, and then turn it into a beer, pop it, and then sell it as kudzu IPA, and then basically tell people, hey, the more of this you drink, the more we'll tear out of our, freeways and forests.
Is that the vine that has the purple flower?
Yes, sir. From my understanding, somebody, I won't say who, sent that to us as an evil trick. Weren't hops done that same way too?
Yeah, I'm 90% sure that kudzu is poisonous. That's why you can't brew with it. And the flower petals, the purple flower petals, are actually edible. So maybe a fan can comment in it and if it is poisonous or not, but I'm pretty sure it is. That's why I think when we talked about this, I said, you can't drink kudzu tea, you'll die.
So, oh, really? So if the flower is edible.
I think
we use
the flower is edible.
So maybe like a white ale with kudzu flower petal.
Yeah. I mean, I like the state fruit. Does anyone know what the state fruit is here?
Yeah, I've actually talked to other
remember what it
brewers.
is?
Yeah, Scuppernong.
That's the vine, but it's actually the muscadine.
The muscadine. Yeah. Gotcha. Yep.
That's the state fruit.
But didn't we realize, and through talking to other people, that the biggest issue with that was the actual skin of the grape was difficult to work with?
They don't have a ton of flavor because actually, like a lot of the tartness and character of they grow behind the brewery. Actually, you can pick them in the summertime. A lot of local people call them the swamp berries because they're just so thick and they have a seed in the middle. There's purple muscadine and there's kind of the green muscadine grape. But they make really nice wine with muscadines here in North Carolina. And
so that would be useful too then.
Yeah, you could do a muscadine beer. And if you remember when we first opened, we did white ale with muscadine. It definitely has a unique taste. And
but look, if I could,
that'd be a cool one to do.
I mean, you know me. I mean, I'm not saying that it's already been done, but I always try to figure out a couple solutions, with a beer. But anyway, if I could do one, I really loved our, not to plug us again, so I'll say it like this, a good, strong Belgian chocolate stout.
Chocolate stout, okay.
We did one about a year or two ago because we make a small amount of products for our tap room that are just exclusive to them. And then we nitroed it. Yeah. And that beer was 10-ish%, a little more. And to me, at the right time, that is pure bliss because it was a little heavier in body. I loved how dark and fine the bubbles were coming out of that nitro. And I mean, every part of that beer was awesome and mysterious. And I know we say that about our XV.
Sure, yeah.
But that beer is awesome. Now, here's the thing. I would not want to go the route of what you see a lot of breweries doing these days where they go, oh, let's take that beer and then let's throw marshmallows in it and graham crackers. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, cage it, cork it, make it the way it is, and then, name it something awesome,
Yeah, that would be cool.
The problem is we don't have time for that, right? No one buys it.
So,
sorry.
It is kind of true. It's not a heavy volume beer,
So, let's aim for the kudzu beer or the other one,
Yeah, I never thought I'd like these seltzers either, but we do make a lot of different seltzers now, and that margarita seltzer we're serving in the tap room is pretty darn good. I've been liking that. That's really solid. That's a good summertime refresher. Little salt, little lime, margarita seltzer. Put it down. Get a little shot of tequila. Add that in there as a floater, man. Now we're talking.
And now we're talking about hop water. I just got stuck in another conversation about hop water. And what's difficult is whenever you've got a friend that has an idea, if you don't agree with it, then they're not your friend anymore. You know what I mean? Like my dad of all people too has been, hey, you should brew this. My wife, hey, you should brew this. And if you don't brew it, people just look at you like you hate them. So I've heard hop water a couple times now. What's your feelings on the hop water?
I mean,
because realize these hop waters are going for $12.99 upwards of $15.99 for carbonated water.
It's insanity.
So do you jump into that or not?
I'm more interested in the CBD because
Uh-oh.
I'm going to tell you why.
This is a whole episode.
Oh yeah. I mean,
that should be the next episode.
So CBD it's expensive. It's a little more expensive. So when you add the extract, you actually increase the value of the, it increase the cost of making it, right? So you can justify, I think, that $11 or $12 4-pack. But when you're adding just hops are expensive too. But I mean, come on, do we really need to charge $12 for a 4-pack of soda with a little hop flavoring? I don't think so, right? So with CBD though, there's actually benefits to CBD, health benefits to it. So you can have somebody that normally likes to go out and drink alcohol, but maybe doesn't want to drink alcohol for a variety of different health reasons. And they want to have maybe they're driving or, whatever, but you have CBD, you can add that and it will relax you. It has some flavor. And it can provide a great alternative, I think, to alcohol. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about putting THC with alcohol. That's illegal. The TTB will not allow that. So if you're going to do a THC drink or a CBD drink, I believe that it has to be completely alcohol free.
So help me with my memory, GABF or maybe CBC in Denver years ago, we met our exporters out at a bar in Denver, and you and I walked in a little bit late. It's a little harder for you and I to get there from the East Coast than some people. And we walked into a bar and we saw them all chatting, and they got us beers. And the whole time I'm standing there, all of their breaths smelled like funk, like they had been smoking pot. And I'm going, man, Joe, we missed the real party, kind of joking around, So that was the very first beer I ever had with anything in it. My question is, what was in that? Being out in Denver, was that CBD or was that THC?
I think those. I feel like that was a Lagunitas beer, and I feel like it was.
It was one of the big guys. It was either Lagunitas or New Belgium, and it was.
Oh, it might have been New Belgium, and it was a hemp extract.
Okay.
To give it that really forward. Now,
everybody's breath smelled like they just came off a joint, and I was going, holy moly.
Full disclosure, I don't smoke marijuana, and
neither one of us do. That's why it was like, whoa, Joe.
I don't partake in those because I'm an officer in the Navy Reserve, and I get drug tested regularly, so I don't partake in that. So
that's another question. Let me ask you this: if you drink a CBD beer, or if they put THC in beer in certain states, would you pop on a test if you had one of those?
Yeah, they're very open about avoiding that stuff. So if you are in a business or job that requires drug testing, you want to avoid CBD and any marijuana extracts. Even walking through a field where they have, I did a tour in Virginia at a cannabis farm, and walking through the field, I avoided that because getting it on your skin could cause you to fail a drug test. Now,
Joe, why were you walking through a field of marijuana? Can you please straighten it out?
I was talking to the owner about potentially partnering a CBD, actually Virginia Organics, about partnering a CBD-based non-alcoholic beer alternative.
Awesome.
Right?
So all completely legal things.
So for the listeners, okay, I want to just tell you something. Marijuana, the cannabis plant and the hop plant are in the same genus. So they're close relatives. And interesting thing about now that you have the legalization of cannabis in a variety of different states, when they advertise this cannabis, they advertise it very similarly to how hops are. The terpenes, remember I talked about those earlier, and the oils that are found in hops are often found in cannabis, right? So there's a lot of parallels there. Things like limonene, citronellol, things that give it a fruity aroma are also found in the cannabis plant. So it's not uncommon to have brewers back here dry hopping something like a hazy or IPA, and they walk in the office like, man, are you guys just smoking a joint or something? Because it smells just like pot, right? But it's not. It's the fact that they're closely related. So that's always kind of a fun fact that I tell people on tours.
You ready? When will we see them genetically modify the hop and the marijuana bud into the same thing and start selling that for beer?
Hop and that's really interesting. So as soon as you said that, you said genetically modified, my brain went in a different direction. I was thinking about there's a yeast company out now, and they're doing really well. Omega Yeast, and I had the pleasure of having a beer with the owner in here in the tap room a few months ago. And what they do is they're using CRISPR technology to modify yeast strains and cause them to biotransform the thiols in the malt to mimic the flavors that you would get from hops. So it's really cool. They have and through the way it ferments and it can really add a tremendous amount of fruitiness. And I've never brewed with one of these. I'd really like to a beer that that you would have to add thousands and thousands of dollars of hops to. Now you don't. You just ferment it with this yeast, and you can mimic the same sort of thing, right? So brewers are experimenting with these. Now I told Dr. Simpson this from Aruxa. about it, and he thought it was fascinating. And he's a PhD, in this kind of stuff, microbiology. And he said this is illegal in Great Britain because you're not allowed to have food that's GMO.
Oh yeah.
This is a uniquely American thing. So I asked the owner of Omega, and it'd be awesome to have him on the podcast. I asked him if he would, and I'm going to go ahead and plant this stake in the ground. So let's see who beats me to the punch. But I want to be the first brewery in the world to put out a beer that glows in the dark. So the way that you do this.
So why didn't you say that when I asked you? That was a perfect tee up. You've been saying this for a while.
It's popped in my brain, right? So the way it would work is you'd take the gene, and some homebrewers have done this already, but I want to do it on a production scale. So for fun, as a kind of beer's supposed to be fun, right? Take the beer, put it under a black light, or turn the lights off in the tap room, and everybody's beer glows in the dark, right? So what they do is they take the gene from phytoplankton, which actually has a photoluminescence to it, and they merge that with the Saccharomyces cerevisiae, and now you have a glow-in-the-dark yeast strain, right? So what you do is you'd brew. How you would do this is you would brew a wheat beer or a beer that is known to have yeast contained that you mix the yeast with, so a German wheat beer would be perfect, and then you have this new glow-in-the-dark strain. You put it under the black light, and now you have, I don't know what that noise is. Sorry, folks. They're working on the heat exchanger in the brewery today. So, hey, it's real. We're calling from the brewery. But you take a wheat beer, have the glow-in-the-dark gene, and then now you have something really novel and unique. So, hey, a note out to the guys at Omega. Let's collaborate and do this. If you don't do it with us, which I think you said no already, we're going to do it in-house.
So here's the thing. Do I have to drink the beer in the dark?
No, of course not. I don't expect any difference in flavor, but it would be fun to see if we could make that thing neon green.
For me to benefit, I can't drink it here.
We could have like a rave in the tap room, turn the lights off.
I know what we do. I got it. We'll start throwing bonfire hiking events where you got to hike with a beer.
Yeah.
And the beer is the only thing that can light it. You can light your way with a beer. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I like that one. So that kind of stuff is fascinating because I remember in the very beginning, we were all crazy about brewing, going, hey, how are we going to push ourselves? What can we do? We were even looking at wineries that, hoisted their vats higher in the air and things like that. So always pushing the threshold is big.
I'm all for elevating beer. I want to do that. And at the same time, we have to recognize, I think go back to my YouTube comments again, somebody's like, oh, this guy is just so pretentious with the beer. And that's not the case ever, right? It's always to inspire a respect for beer. And we take the Belgians and put them here because they find a place for beer at the dinner table. They find a place for beer at special events, right? We're doing that more in America, but we have been so homogenized with all of this mass-produced macro lagers. Nothing wrong with them. They have a time and a place, right, to enjoy those. That now we say, whoa, look at the whole world. We can really expand it and open everybody up to all this beer. Let's elevate beer. So that's kind of the goal, but at the same time with not being to a point where we're too full of ourselves and realize that beer's supposed to be fun. So
we do always have fun. That's where this podcast came from.
So I think it was one of the other Master Cicerones. We had a party here at Sugar Creek and thanks for humoring me on this. We had all the Master Cicerones in the world pick 2 of their favorite beers, and then we tried to get them and put them on tap. So I remember we were doing an interview with one of the Master Cicerones, and she said to me, hey, what styles do you like to drink now, or what are you doing in here? And I said, ironically, we're making a frozen beer slushy. We're one of the first in Charlotte to do it. And she gasped, I can't believe you would do that, right?
Yeah.
But why can't you make something awesome and elevate that, right? Elevate the beer slushy. We make one with the big O, and it's awesome. So if you haven't tried a beer slushy, they're really cool because beer is full of protein. And that protein is what gives that awesome foam on the beer. When you freeze it and mix it, it creates a creaminess, almost like ice cream. It's a great beer to freeze and add flavoring to. So
it really helps. We always talk about service. You and I have talking about our service, or the last time you visited your own brewery, right? Was the food good? Was the beer good? Was the experience good? It all comes down with that beer slushy. we get a lot of regulars that thank us because their wives have something to drink. You know, it keeps their wives here, or it keeps, someone that's not.
Now you have to
really-
be careful with that, Eric, because women drink tons of beer too, right?
Well,
Of course.
Well, and the other way around. You're exactly right. Thank you for keeping me like that. Or you'll have, the people that come home, their kid comes home from college and they don't really like the taste of craft beer, but they probably drink some light lagers and they'll order that, and it just gives us a variety in our tap room, along with our Belgian Cajun cork stuff and in our fruited stuff, our soured stuff. We've always talked about it. I think in our tap room, and we focus a lot on it, even though it's a smaller tap room. We opened this place before people went nuts in the restaurant industry, but we've always kept a really dynamic beer menu. We've always had some doubles and some triples. We've always had some porters and stouts. We've always had some lagers. We've always had your hoppy stuff. And now we've even got nitroed stuff, fruited sours, fruited IPAs.
Ciders. We have some gluten-free stuff.
I mean, right now,
you got to have something for everybody.
you got to have something for everybody, and you walk in some of these places and they're either heavy duty stouts and heavy duty IPAs, or, so it's good. So hats off to the taproom staff and the employees for always believing in us.
Well, hey, we have to, we're getting close to wrapping up here. I think we covered a lot of ground today, but I think a great tradition is I love to hear, and I know our viewers would love to hear, give us another story from the combat zone, Eric.
Oh my gosh, man, this
Give
guy.
it to the listeners. They want to hear it. We got a special, I really have a high place in my heart for your service there.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
You're on the ground doing stuff, and a lot of times people don't like to share that kind of stuff, but I think one of your gifts is in storytelling and letting people know this. So
That's him saying I talk too much.
Let's get a story.
Oh man, there's, what's crazy,
What comes to mind?
Well, when we turned 40, I started to realize it was harder to remember some of these stories, which I guess is the art of storytelling, right? You tell your stories, but I've got a bunch of buddies that are still around, and we talk about it all the time. But I'll give you another one that's non-combative. All right. For the people that want to hear, infantry stuff, eventually it'll come. If you can't say naughty things on comments though, but I'll say this one. Afghanistan, just take down Kandahar Air Base. The Army pushes us all the way up to we called it the Middle Passage. And there's only one paved road in all of Afghanistan. And we thought we were going to be gone for 2 months. We end up 8 months. And it was even torture. I mean, look, when you're in the Marine Corps, you're ready for anything, but it's just the mind games never stop. We thought we were leaving at the 7-month mark. At the 8-month mark, we thought there was a plane landing. I wake up at 5 a.m. in a fighting hole, and there's lieutenants in a meeting, and I'm going, what are they doing up this early? They're never up this early. We found out we were going to be there another month, but my story is this, right? We got 2 MREs and 8 bottles of water a day. And whenever we go into some of these small towns and villages, we realize not everybody's a bad guy, right? There's actually small entrepreneurs and franchisee owners, right? So the one thing that we can always find when we go into these places, besides hashish and peppers and
What kind of peppers?
they always had some kind of hot pepper from somewhere.
Oh, okay.
And just
Chilies
to spice things up. I think it was a dietary need or something, and poppy, because they grow a lot of poppy over there. But there was always a Zam Zam store.
Oh yeah.
There's always a guy. Look at Joe. Zam Zam. So Zam Zam in Afghanistan is about the only thing you can get other than water. Now, granted, look, they make pulled tea. If you've never seen anybody make pulled tea, it's amazing. But Zam Zam, and we would always be able to get these 2-liter bottles or these 1-liter bottles of orange flavored soda called Zam Zam. And when that's all you have, that, and for the guys that smoked, and I did smoke back then, it was just one of those things used to pass time. Zam Zam and cigarettes is everything when you've got nothing.
So tell everybody how you cooled it down out in the
Bingo.
field.
All right, because I verified this with you. So one of us infantry Marines is over there and figures out that this is bad to say, but we were every now and then we'd get ice, but there wasn't a lot of ice over there, and we would use some of the body bags and we'd fill them with ice and water and we'd try to super cool real quick. But I mean, out there it's 110 degrees. The ice lives 5 minutes gone. But as you load up on Zamzam, maybe you want to take 2 or 3 bottles with you on the next road. Those things are piping hot by the time you want to drink them. So one of the Marines figured out, we always wore these black wool socks because they just took care of your feet better and more durable. If you took your Zamzam bottle and crammed it into your boot sock, had to be black, and then used some of your canteen water, and then left that bottle out in the direct sun, preferably on a hot rock, and there's plenty of those in Afghanistan, probably 20, 30 minutes, you've got ice cold Zamzam. The greatest thing you can possibly have in the middle of eating 2 MREs a day and 8 bottles of water.
The magic of science.
So if you've ever been between a rock and a hard place and your Zamzam is warm, stick it in a boot sock, wet it, and put it out in the direct sunlight. And Joe can probably explain the science better, but apparently evaporation pulls the heat out of the liquid.
That's exactly it. Latent heat of evaporation. So it's
Boom.
a thermodynamic principle.
Thermodynamic principle.
Yeah. So think about it. Like if you heat water up, okay, until you add heat to water until it boils. You get to the point at 212 degrees at sea level. It starts boiling, and now you have steam. Well, if you could capture, you have phase change. If you could capture all that steam and add more heat to it, it doesn't change phase anymore. It just heats up the steam, right? So it works on this principle called the latent heat of evaporation. But hey, by the way, when I was in Afghanistan, we didn't have Zamzam, which is a travesty. We had another drink. I don't know if you've ever had this one. It was called Rip It. It's what it's called. So Rip Its were what everybody drank. They were kind of like the local armed force energy drink. And I think there's 300 milligrams of caffeine in a can of that stuff.
Oh, well, look.
And you just, once you have one of those, man, you're zooted.
So for one, you're still in, and it's been a long time. I was beginning of 2002 drinking Zamzam in Afghanistan, and it wasn't anything that the military brought in. That was what the Afghani people bought and sold to each other in these villages. So besides the fact that you're a youngster in my eyes over there, but it would be a travesty if Zamzam went out of business.
I mean,
we need to make a Zamzam orange beer. Orange seltzer Zamzam.
There we have it, the next $1 million idea.
Fresh from Afghani.
Yeah.
But hey, look, I did want to say one thing. We love our staff, and every single one of them works hard for us. Joe and I are constantly out in the streets doing stuff, but we just promoted a phenomenal brewer that's been with us for a while, and she's been over here on my side working really hard. Cassie has just been promoted to full-blown
manager. Yeah, so she's in charge of all the distribution and inventory management now, which is a new important job at Sugar Creek to kind of keep track of all the finished goods and make sure all the deliveries get out on time. And on top of that, juggling some brewing schedules. So it's a big, important job.
So for me, I'm happy for Cassie and our team. Hopefully she watches this channel and sees this.
She probably had enough of us by the end of the day.
She also she also has a garden at home, and she makes the best pickles. So I have not had a chance to say congratulations to her, so I wanted to do it publicly, and that we love our staff.
Yeah, so listen, folks, let us know who you want to have on the show next time. We'll reach out to them, see if we can get them in here. We'll start bringing some guests on, or otherwise we're going to bore you with more stories from inside the brewing industry.
And let us know how we poured that pumpkin beer.
Cheers.